Hi, my name is Julia Silge, and I'm a data scientist and engineering manager at Posit PBC. And today in this screencast, we are going to talk about model cards. Model cards are definitely something that you may have heard about in the worlds of data science and machine learning. But today we're going to talk about what they are, when you make them, how to get started, and kind of what are the different ways you can really practically use them inside of an organization. The main idea here is that, we all know how important good documentation is, right? If we are going to choose to use software, often how good the documentation is makes a difference in how easy it is to get started, how easy it is to know how to use it. When is it appropriate to use it? What is its purpose? What are the normal use cases for it? It turns out models work this way too. When we document models, we think about how are we talking to people about what it's like, how we made it, what are the use cases that are appropriate for it. It really can help us be more responsible in our use of machine learning and set ourselves up for success in whatever applications it is that we're using machine learning. So let's dig in and get started.
All right, let's dig into this. So first, I want to talk just a little bit about the model development process here. Model cards are something you build as part of the model development process. So here I'm going to say, let's imagine that I am a data scientist working at a company in our HR department. I am thinking about are the employees at our company, and let's say that here I've got data on attrition, like for various different employees. Do they leave our company or not? And I am going to go through a model development process here and split my data on employee attrition into training and testing. I'm going to save that testing data to use for my model card, and then I'm going to fit my model here. I'm going to fit it. So this for this demonstration purposes, like this, let's look at this and picture this as the time that we spend actually doing exploratory data analysis, developing a model, figuring out what the right kind of model to build is. Let's say I've done this now, and now it's time for me to deploy my model to finish my model. So I'm going to load vetiver and pins, and then I'm going to connect to a Posit Connect board as a place to store my pins. If you can also use things like an S3 bucket or a network drive, a different place. But I am going to, for this demonstration purpose, use a demo Posit Connect server that we have here. And I'm going to create a vetiver model. And then what I say is like, okay, my model is done. I have gone through the whole model development process. I have found my final model. And so what I am going to do is I am going to store this final model together with its metadata as a pin on Posit Connect here. Now let's notice what happened here. It told me that it wrote the pin, and then it says, hey, you know what you should do? You should create a model card for this model now that you published it. It says, it tells me a little bit about what a model card is. It's a way for us to do this kind of transparent, responsible reporting here. And it says that vetiver has a template as a place to start. So this is when in the process you go about thinking about this documentation for your model. It's when you've decided you are done with model development. Please go along with my story here that this thing I just did in 30 seconds is like model development. But once I'm done with that process of model development, it's time for me to think about a model card. It's time for me to think about documenting my model. So we do have a template for you to get started with, and I can start one here. Let's say I'm just gonna the file. I'm just gonna write to like a little tiny file here. That's our Markdown, and I'm going to get the template. It's called vetiver model card, like this, and it is in fact in the. Whoops. It is in fact in the vetiver package, like so. And so what we see here is we see this whole template that got popped up here for me. Incredible, right? So this is our Markdown template that can let you get started. So if you have never written a model card, this is a great place to start. You can pop open this thing and then see it has in it all these headings. And the where this idea comes from is from I am going to pull this here so that we can just look at this. This paper that was published in 2019, Margaret Mitchell is the main author, and it's called Model Cards for Model Reporting. And the idea here is that like we're using machine learning models all the time, but we don't have a good framework for how to document them, how to go about saying how to use them. And so this paper, which I highly recommend that you read, really outlines what are some of the what is the kind of framework that you could use to document any trained machine learning model. These folks wrote this paper in the context of working on fairness, accountability, and transparency in models, but this is a concept that can be used in any kind of model, and in fact is a great way to document the kind of thing that you have there. So here is a little, like a very very sort of contrived kind of like, here's a template for a thing to you to do. I want to now pull up a model card that would maybe that I have spent a little bit of time on. In this demo, I didn't want to sit here typing for you, but I do want to let's restart. So let's say we're totally done with this. We're done with model development, and now we're writing this model card. Notice I am working in Quarto now. I wrote this one as Quarto instead of our Markdown because I want to be able to show you a few different ways I might use it as a Quarto document. And so I spent a little bit of time for this model. The model, let me let's pull this up. Oh right, I haven't done it yet. So let's run some of this code here so that I can see this model here. Well, let me print it out here. This classification modeling workflow that I made to predict attrition for employees. Let's walk through what are the things that I have done here? What are the things that we have done to put together a model card? So the first section is model details. And here we have a mix of things that I have been able to do in an automated way with things that I had to write myself. So for example, we can get some automated information off of the model itself and write code that I could reuse, every single time I do a model card. But then there are pieces here that are about this particular model that I as a human being have to write. So we kind of have this, like many of the kinds of reporting and data artifacts we make, they're part of it is code that is run, and part of it is this human thought that goes into what is happening here. So we've got some details. The next important the section that we have here is the intended use of the model card. And here I outline kind of like what might might someone in this situation say? They might say like this, the primary use here is identifying employees at higher risk of attrition. We also want to say like, who are the users of the model? In this case, I'm saying like, oh, this is for us in HR to use, right? And then I say some things that are out of scope, right? Like we're not gonna, in this case, I say, hey, we're not gonna provide these scores to individual managers to say like, hey, this person needs a raise, because they might be at risk for attrition. So we've got intended use case here. The next section after this is important factors. So this is, what are the important things to know about this model? This model has to do with human beings. And so that is, there are some very important factors here, but so many of our models do, right? So we highlight how this relates to demographics. We talk about, when we evaluated the model, we examine aspects like how the model performs across different departments or in different demographic characteristics. Now we go into the metrics. So over here, you'll notice that, back over here. Sorry. So here we're saying, how are we evaluating how this model is doing? So I outline here two metrics that I've decided to use in this model card. One of them is accuracy and one of them is mean log loss. Notice that I'm specific about how I computed it so that when other people come to look at this documentation, they're clear on what I did. I said I chose those metrics because the first one, accuracy, helps us understand what proportion of our predictions are correct, and then the second one, mean log loss, helps us understand how close our predictions are to the true values there. So we talk about what metrics are we going to use. Then we begin to talk about what data we're using. So we were specific about the training data set, like how many examples are in it, where did we get it? We're specific here about what is the shape of the data that goes into training this model. Like when we have that training data, and in this case, job satisfaction is a factor. Monthly income is integer value, and then we have more factors for whether someone works overtime and what department they're in here. So we're specific here also about the evaluation data set. What data are we using to evaluate the model? And in this case, it's a random sample that is held out from an original data set of employees here. So we split our data here into training and testing. And typically, when you're writing a model card, so remember, model card is work that you do at the end of model development. And so at that time, what data do you have? You have this pool of data that you have divided into training and testing. And then that testing data here is what we're using to evaluate our model here. So now it's time for us to do some quantitative analysis here. So I'm gonna to get that testing data back, and I am going to make predictions here with it. So remember, this is not the data that the model was trained on. It was not used for the model estimation, but it is data that I have at the time of model training. So, we often call this the holdout set or the test set here. This is what I'm using for model card. I don't want to use the training set here to evaluate the model in the model card, because just like if I'm using that to try to choose a model, once again, like that would give us overly optimistic answers here. So one thing that the paper really makes a point of, the model card paper, is that it's very common to report overall model performance. So here are those metrics that I'm going to use, and I'm computing those here for us. And we see the accuracy is roughly 0.8, and the mean log loss roughly 0.4. So accuracy is a model that's better when it's high. So closer to 1 is better. Log loss is a metric that's better when it's low. So closer to 0 is better here. So it's very common for us to look at overall model performance. But something that that paper really points out that I think is super valuable, that is also important to report metrics disaggregated by like something that is important. So like, for example, I can look at differences in these metrics across my gender categories. So I have women and men here, and these look pretty close to me, right? Like these are not very different, but it's important that I look at the disaggregated metrics so that I can know if I have differences, if my model performs better for one category of, in this case, person, right? Like, or versus another. This is an important thing to have when we document our models. So this is by gender. I can also look here by education. And here you'll notice, so let's look at accuracy. Accuracy kind of changes across this factor from less than college, some college, bachelor, master's degree, doctorate. Like we see a shift in accuracy. So if we look, we see the same thing when it comes to log loss. Like we're able to do a much better job predicting whether someone is on their way out of the job or not for these people with high education. Whereas these people who have lower education, we're doing a worse job. We're doing a worse job predicting whether they, attrition for that group. So this, this highlights how important it is to report model performance disaggregated by, whatever is important. Or the kind of things that we know may be important here. Remember that these were not the inputs to the model. The inputs to the model were job satisfaction, monthly income, overtime, and department. So these are not things like, these are the things that go into the model. And at the same time, we see these kinds of shifts across the different, so we don't see a shift in this demographic, and we do see shifts and differences in this demographic. So when you document your model, this is exactly the kind of thing that we need to be clear about so that people can know and use this model in the best way possible. A model card, also a great place to visualize model performance. So here, I can make an ROC curve for across the different departments in my imaginary company where I'm imagining that I'm a data scientist. And here, looking at this plot, maybe we do a bit better we do a better job predicting accurately for research than for sales. That might be something, but there's maybe a moderate difference there. And it looks like the number of people in human resources are much smaller. There's fewer of them. And so, we have less confidence there as well. So that's good, important information to see. Okay, so this was all this quantitative analysis section, which is a super important part of our documentation for our model. Then we kind of get to these last couple sections here. So we have first, ethical considerations. So let's notice what I said here. It's we considered how this model may exacerbate existing inequality in our company by performing better or worse for different groups. So I kind of outlined somewhere I don't think there's significant differences, and then somewhere I do think there's significant differences. I think I see differences here in education. So this is important for the ethical consideration. So not all models have as clear an ethical implication as this one here. But I think it is, I'm really thankful for tools and frameworks like this model card one that help me identify when it is and help me do a good job of documenting a model in the best way possible. And then the last section that the model card framework recommends is a caveats and recommendations. So I kind of imagine what I might recommend in a situation. Here, some caveats, right? That these are like we can't account for individual variation. I have something here that like if management is if they're the users, like if people, let's say leaders in HR are the users for this model, they have to know that the scores are not equally accurate for all employees. And then the specific caveat that I have here, the model is less useful in predicting attrition for employees with less education than those with more. So we can't count on this model to give us the same results across these different kinds of groups there. Okay, so that is the model card itself. The model card itself. So the next sort of little category of things I want to talk about is like, what do I do now? Let's say I spent a lot of time developing my model. And then I sat down, I spent some time documenting my model, and I have this great document that I have made. What do I do with it? Where does it go? What are some good practices around it? So I am going to walk through a couple of very, very concrete kinds of things that you can do. So this is a Quarto file. And so if I come here and I decide to render the Quarto file, I've got some options. Let me say first I'm going to render it to HTML because that will let me actually look at it here in Positron and be able to show you kind of what it looks like. So here it goes, and then it is going to pop up after I do this. Whoops. Let me pop it up here. And so what we've got here is the rendered HTML over here on this side. And so you can see we've got, our nice links. We have our output here. Depending on who the audience was for this document, I might make these into some nicer tables, but we can kind of like click back and forth here and see the gender, see education, see the department here, see the rest of my stuff. So here is some rendered HTML. So now that this is rendered, it can go pretty much anywhere. It can go anywhere that HTML can go, which is a lot of places. Let me show you where I might, one place I might go ahead and publish it. I might take the HTML and deploy it to Posit Connect. If I think that will work. And I'm going to use this Posit Connect here. So let's see if let me click this. It is going to upload the bundle and pop up if I click view here. So here it is. So I just published this to Posit Connect, which is a great place for me to be able to share this with people who I work with. One thing that is great about publishing this to Connect is that Connect is probably also where the binary artifact for the model is. So, and you can actually start to create like a dashboard or tags, or use the organization that exists on Connect to be able to connect those things together. So Posit Connect can be a great place to publish HTML if the people who are the users of the model can come to Connect and see it and see your published thing here. So let's start with that. So option number 1, we render to HTML, which, that's what this looks like over here. And then we can then publish to any, we can of course do something like GitHub Pages, but maybe more likely something like Posit Connect. Now, let's say, what are the other options that I can do here? So I'm over here in the terminal. What we happened before is this thing rendered to HTML. I also can render to lots of other different kinds of things. For example, I can render to just plain Markdown, and then I am gonna pop that open. The the thing that I did with the little the tab set, it does not actually work so well in Markdown. So I would maybe want to edit this file a little bit if my main target was Markdown. But what is great about Markdown, and something I have done, is that I can now check it into the repo where I have my model training code. So in fact, it makes a pretty good README. So you could, here, like you can take that that Markdown, and you can call it the README. And then if this were, let's say this project that I'm working on was a GitHub repo that I was where I stored my information about this model, I can use that. Actually, it makes a fantastic README for that repo. When would I choose one or the other? I think I would choose HTML and Posit Connect when the users of the models were business stakeholders, and I think I would choose the like treating it like a README when the main users of the model were maybe software engineer colleagues who need to know what the model is like, how to use it, various things there. I think it's one thing I have found helpful is to think about the data artifact I'm making really matching the user who needs to read it, right? Like, where are they going and what do they need to know and find? Okay, we've got other options. If we come back here, I can, when I render the document, I can render it, to a PDF here. When I render to PDF, these actually look quite nice these days. And if I render to a PDF, that lets me do something like, upload it to Google Drive or to Teams or, wherever it is, and like I have then a artifact that business stakeholders, whoever needs to know what the model is like, can go in and get. The other thing I've done, actually, like I have done my fair amount of like rendering to Word and then uploading Word to Google Drive, and that also gives me this nice sort of workflow where I can get something into Google Drive that people can comment on that I myself have made with Quarto. So actually, I'm even going to say we can publish straight to Confluence using Quarto, which is another really great thing to be aware of. So by using this sort of code first approach to documentation, you get this reusable thing that you can put where it best makes sense for the user that you like, who are the users, who are the readers, the people, the audience for this. You can put it where they need to go. So the next thing I want to talk about a little bit is, how does this fit into model monitoring? So I'm going to show you an example of a model monitoring dashboard that incorporates model card information. So this is for a vetiver model that was trained with Python, and that my colleague Isabel Zimmerman made. And you can see we've got a like a front page here that has model card information. And then it also has model monitoring information. How is it performing over time? And a model monitoring dashboard also can give us information, like help us identify what is most likely to be misclassified. So what I want to highlight a few things. The model card typically is typically information that we wrote and that we created at the time of model development. And it's very useful to integrate it into a model monitoring dashboard, but a model monitoring dashboard is typically made so that we can monitor over time new data that is coming in. So I think the really important things to think about are what data is being used. If we pop back over here and we look at this, the data that is going into this is data that I had available to me when I trained my model. And so that is available for me to evaluate the model, choose a model, all the things that are part of doing model development. When it comes to not that one, this one. When it comes to model monitoring, that's my model is in production and new data is coming in. I'm making predictions, and then I want to say, how is my model doing over time? So I need to evaluate using the new data, not the data available to me at the time. And I again want to highlight what is great about about using this kind of code first approach to this kind of documentation, because I actually, like, if I decided I wanted to do something like that, the first step for me is this. Like, I change it from being something that I was planning to render to an HTML report to a dashboard. And then I start coming in and I start doing things like row and whatnot, to determine where my various like what will my dashboard look like. But this is the first thing that happens, and I'm able to incorporate in this case, the model card information that I have into a dashboard that then can be presented there. So model monitoring is a separate sort of task than model documentation, but depending on who the users are of this information, you can integrate them and you can present them in ways that are really holistic and fluent.
All right, so we spent some time talking about model cards today. We talked about when we make model cards, which is at the end of the model development process. We talked about how to get started easily using templates. What are the different parts that if we're going to use the framework from the 2019 paper, what are the different sections that we would want to have and be able to make sure we include. And then we talked about, once it's written, where does it go? And where do we put it? Who is supposed to read it? I mean, I think the big takeaway is the person who needs to read it is the person who is going to use the model, who is going to use that prediction to make a decision or to do something there. So I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you next time.